I can't hear you. Can't hear you.
How about now?
Okay, now I can hear you.
All right. Are you recording? All right. Okay. We have the Bible Prepper, and we're going to talk about current events, what's happening in the Middle East right now in Israel. Everyone's aware. Gaza, Hamas went in, slaughtered a bunch of the Israeli citizens. So, Everett, what do you think is going on as far as Bible prophecy? Some are saying that perhaps this is the time that the Bible speaks about in prophecy that Israel is going to be surrounded. Can you tell us what you know about this?
Yeah, it is Bible prophecy is happening. There's no question about it. It's basically the most simply explained by the Matthew 24 beginning where the disciples asked Jesus, tell us when will the end of the age come? And Jesus answered, and he said, there'll be nations rising against nations and wars and rumors of wars. And when you see these things, it's the beginning of birth pains. And so these wars that are breaking out in like Ukraine and Russia and Hamas and Israel, these are birth pains, contractions that are escalating, meaning that military hostility around the world is going to continue to increase, just like a woman in labor has birth pains that keep increasing. But it basically, the prophecies about Israel are described in Ezekiel 38 as a very well-known prophecy about in the latter days that these nations will come together from the far north. And it says they will include Gog, Magog, Meshech, Tubal. It includes other translations explain it as being Iran, Persia, Muslims, and Libya, people from Africa, Ethiopia. Nations all gather together and they form a large army, and they devise an evil scheme. They say, we will attack people, unsuspecting people who are living in peace, who are rich in abundance of goods and supplies, and it describes them as living in cities without walls, having no gates or bars, that are people who are rich in abundance of supply, a lot of cattle. And I go, this is not talking about the Holy Land. Modern Jerusalem has completed 40 miles of 20-foot high wall around that city for the purpose of securing that city from the suicide bombers and terrorist attacks, meaning that they haven't been living in a land of peace. They're not dwelling securely in cities without walls, gates, or bars. So, but it does say in that Ezekiel 38 chapter that they will devise an evil scheme to attack my people, Israel. It says, will you not take notice of my people, Israel, who are living securely in cities without walls, gates, or bars? So the people, Israel, the question is, who are they? And I've done quite a bit of researching about the people Israel. For one thing, the Bible, Abraham was told by God he would be father of many nations, and he became father of Isaac, and Isaac had Jacob and Esau, and Jacob became the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob's name was changed to Israel. He's the father of the 12 tribes. So the Israelites today are many nations. It's that simple. And so the Israelites actually were being freed out of Egypt as slaves, where they built the pyramids, and they were being told by the Pharaoh, get your own bricks, get your own straw to make your bricks, keep making bricks, don't reduce the number of quota of them you make every day. The burden was getting heavier. The Israelites were crying and praying to God, and God heard their cry, and he sent Moses to tell the Pharaoh, let the people go. Anyway, they did get delivered, and the Red Sea and the Pharaoh's army was destroyed. But then Moses led the Israelites for 40 years through the wilderness until it come at the end of his 120 years, where he's still strong, doesn't suffer dimness of vision. He can still see good, and he's still strong. He's told by God to meet God on top of Mount Nebo. Well, hiking to a mountaintop is quite a feat and for a young man, but a man at 120 who can still hike to the top of mountains is in pretty good shape, because there's a lot of huffing and puffing and hiking, and you got to stop and catch your breath and stuff. But that's why Moses is in good shape. He had a lot of cardiovascular his whole last 40 years of his life. The last 1/3 of his life is these 40 years leading the children through the wilderness. He doesn't start till he's 80. But when he dies, God tells him, the promised land lies to the west, beyond the great sea. Some translations have a little comment at the bottom of the page, say Mediterranean. Well, the Mediterranean would be visible looking westward from the top of Mount Nebo. But there's a lot of evidence. It all points to the fact that the Great Sea is the Atlantic, the Promised Lands, the North America, or maybe even South America, the New World. And because what happens is then Joshua takes over to them. Now they are equipped with new information from Moses right before he died. They got to go west. And they begin to travel westward. And where do they wind up? In Greece. And they became, and now one of the promises that Israel, the father, made to the 12 sons before he passes away in Egypt, because he went there to get food because Joseph had stockpiled the food and God sent him ahead of him. Anyway, Israel tells his son Judah, the blessing he says on him is the ruling scepter will never leave your hand, meaning that you will be the ruler. And so we see the Greek Empire, which is called the birthplace of democracy, meaning this is the first nation in the history of mankind who did form elected form of representative form of government. But there's the movie The 300 shows the King Leonidas confronting the Persian commander with an army so large their arrows would blot out the sun. He says, "You're talking to free men who'd rather die fighting as free men than live as your slaves." It's my I am convinced we are the modern Israelite descendants of the Greek warriors who were free men who'd rather die fighting as free men. It's in the New Hampshire state motto: live free or die. That's who we are. And we are now facing we're going to be facing another huge army. And Revelation 9 mentions an army of 200 million, but that's not for around 3.5 years further down the road, because that army of 200 million in Revelation 9 is why Jesus has to arrive and destroy them with an army coming from heaven in Revelation 19:11. But right now we're watching the nation Israel being attacked. Is basically, if you research it, it was the Rothschilds who were behind them. They set it all up, and it's I don't know that much about how bad they are. I know that we're friends, and a lot of our government and a lot of our politicians and a lot of churches and pastors are all believing that we have to support Israel, because the Bible does say whoever supports Israel will be blessed. But when you consider this continuous development in the history after the Egypt falls and they move westward into Greece, the Greek Empire does have its period of time, and they build amazing stonework, because they're masonry experts. They made bricks and they built pyramids, and that skill and knowledge they take with them everywhere they go. And that's why you see the Greek temples on the hilltops and stuff still remaining after thousands of years. But the Greek Empire falls and it goes westward and becomes the Roman Empire, where you got the same kind of massive Roman masonry work, like the Roman Colosseum and Roman aqueducts, all kinds of masonry work that they do. And the Roman Empire rises and falls. And then they even go further west as history moves forward in time, and there becomes a British Empire. The sun never set on the British Empire. And they also have amazing castles and structures still standing in Great Britain. There's a castle in Scotland with 12 columns with the names of the 12 tribes at the base of the 12 columns, built in the 11th century. So here it still stands, 1,000 years later, because they know how to build with bricks, and they were expert masons. But they came out of Egypt as slave masons, And now everyone's aware of people called the Freemasons. And the reason people refer to themselves as Freemasons is because the Freemasons knew they came from slave Masons. And they emphasize the fact that today they are Freemasons. They still have the knowledge and skill of doing the Masonry work. But Satan has been working, trying to corrupt God's people. That's why the money that the Rothschilds, who own the Federal Reserve banking system, have on the $1 bill, the pyramid from Egypt, with the eye on the top, with Satan. It's the Illuminati or Luciferian. It's all connected. Anyway, Satan has been trying to destroy God's people all the way clear from the time they left Egypt and the Red Sea parted. They had they took all the gold. They plundered the Egyptians, and with all the gold they got, they built a golden calf. And while Moses was up on the mountain getting the 10 Commandments, they had this big golden calf idol worshiping ceremony that Moses came down all angry at him. And so there's been this demonic element following the Israelites throughout history. And Satan wants to destroy them. And who they are today, because the name Denmark is also like Mark of Dan, tribe of Dan. And the name Anglo-Saxon, in my research, I didn't invent or make up this stuff. I read about it. They say that the name Saxon means sons of Isaac. Isaac, father of Jacob and Esau, the Israelites. I saw a documentary about the Vikings. They're blue-eyed, long, blonde-haired warriors that they were out on the oceans, constantly going this way and that way. And the documentary said it appeared they were constantly looking for something, but the narrator of the documentary said, but we don't understand what it is they were looking for. I go, well, I do. They're still looking for the promised land. Because when you go westward, you go to France, you can see the English Channel 17 miles across is the British Isles. You can go there. You can go north. You find Norway, Scotland. You can find Sweden and Norway and Finland. And you just keep looking around. They say that before Columbus came, there was actually evidence of Vikings being on North America. Leif Erikson or whatever, they found evidence that they had maybe been in here. Anyway, the bottom line is we today are the Israelites. We don't know who we are. That's a very important thing to understand. We are the children of Israel. And we have the DNA of Abraham in our bones, because we are his children. The Bible says his descendants will be like sand on the seashore, stars in the sky. This is no small thing. But all the prophecies speaking about Israel, including Daniel 9:11, where it comes right out and says, all Israel is refusing to obey. Therefore, the curses that are written in the book of Moses will come upon them. And it talks about the Lord will turn the rain of the land into dust and powder, and smite him with a wasting disease, fever, inflammation, scorching heat and drought and blight and mildew, sores, boils, tumors, and itch, from which there's no cure. It's talking about radiation sickness, nuclear bombs, fallout dust. There's a day of the Lord is coming, but God has a good plan. The plan is to end this wickedness and to destroy the enemies of Christianity, the enemies of Christ, the wicked, the Satan and all of his hierarchy that are ruling this world right now through the control of money and the power that money brings them. And they're Luciferian, and you can look up the Bohemian Grove with Alex Jones shows them doing a satanic ceremony with a 40-foot tall owl statue where they're praying to this demonic force, saying, "Oh, owl of Bohemia, we beseech thee, grant us thy counsel." And it's an all-male club, bunch of homosexual perverts. Nixon went there. All the world leaders are going there because they're ruling the world. And that's who the pyramid of global government is based on. Satan worshiping, filthy rich men who are ruling the world because they worship Satan, because that's what Satan said to Jesus after he fasted 40 days. He said, if you'll just bow down and worship me, well, I'll give you all the world. You can be the ruler of all this world. And so these men have made the agreement with Satan. They've sold their souls. They worship Satan. They have unlimited amounts, trillions of dollars, and they're trying to establish a one world government, which is basically what Jesus is coming to do. When Jesus arrives, it says all the nations will bow before him. and there'll be liberty and justice where the Spirit of the Lord is. But Satan's always trying to get the jump and create a synthetic or counterfeit of the real plan that God has. God has a very good plan for this planet. It is to bring the kingdom of heaven to this earth. It's going to involve these birth pains we're going through, but it's actually the best plan ever. There's nothing that could be done that would be easier to accomplish. If it could be done in any other manner, that would be less pain and suffering. But it's kind of like the flood came and had to wash away all the filth in the time of Noah, but Noah got a plan from God 100 years before the flood. You need to build an ark. You need to get ready. There's going to be water everywhere you look for many days. And Noah did it. And when the rains came, Noah was stretched out in a hammock, just leaning back. He could feel the water starting to rise from the rain. At some point, the ark began to float and become buoyant. And at that point, I can see Moses in there, stretched out on a hammock. He's got his food, his animals, his family, and he's like chewing on a straw, humming a little tune like, I'm sailing, I'm sailing. He's content, he's happy, he's taken care of, while all the wicked are out there pounding on the wall of the ark. Let us in, we're drowning. God is coming to cleanse the world of the wicked. He's coming to look at every man's heart. And he knows your heart. He knows what motivates you, and he knows what's behind your actions. And he knows whether you're trying to if you're a hypocrite in a church or you're a pastor. I was just reading Ezekiel 33. It talks about woe to the shepherds. They're feeding themselves, but not the flock. God knows pastors. They can know the word. They can be preaching the word, but he knows if what they're doing is trying to grow the size of their congregation by telling them the warm, fuzzy things that tickle the ear, or is he willing to tell them the truth that nuclear war is coming, the day of the Lord is coming, and the scroll's going to break open the seals in Revelation 6, where it does say the Lamb broke open this first seal. And out comes the voice of the white horse with the voice of thunder. Thunder's a massive explosion sound Mother Nature makes, depicting the nuclear bombs going off suddenly in the middle of the night when summer's near. We're being told when. We just don't know the day or the hour. But there's going to be a nuclear attack coming, and God is the one who's doing it. He's letting the enemies do it, just like he let the enemy drive nails into his son on the cross and crucify him, and he put his son through all that pain. But the John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son, that who believes in him will never perish, have everlasting life. I go, but look what the God the Father did to his own son. Can you believe did he love his son? Of course he did. See, Satan thought that was his ultimate triumph over the Son of God who came, with casting out demons and healing the sick and teaching love and sermons on the mount. The demonic forces said, we want to kill him. This is going to be the end of him. We're going to destroy him. But he overcame death. He arose and he took all the sin of mankind on him. And what Satan thought was his greatest triumph was in fact his greatest defeat. It's going to be like that again. The dark forces are rising. They think they're going to be taking over this world. They're going to accomplish everything they want to do. They're going to cause a lot of death and destruction. But in the end, it's going to be their death and destruction. And it's going to be the beginning of a new age where it says, never again will men train for war. It's just an amazing plan God has got, and it's all positive. We just, and for the people who know the Lord, you read Isaiah 3:10, it says to tell the righteous it'll be well with them. It's woe to the wicked. The disaster that's coming is on the wicked. It says in 2 Peter 2:6 that he condemned Sodom and Gomorrah. He burned them to ashes, and he made them an example of what's going to happen to the ungodly. So cities are going to burn. It's the ungodly that get taken out. It's time to clean house. We can all sit around being frustrated about watching what we see as premeditated mass murders like 9/11. We now know that as George Bush and Tony Blair stood in front of the White House lawn declaring we're going after these terrorists, we know that they orchestrated this themselves. They had it all planned. building number 7 came down with professional modern demolition technology that requires a considerable amount of time setting charges on load-bearing columns and having them go off in time sequence. That's all a pre-planned event. They had it all planned in Lahaina. Look at what happened in Lahaina. They blocked off the city street. They shut off the warning design. They turned off the water mains. They burned all them people. And I heard that a short while prior to Lahaina burning, that they had meetings at their city hall to trying to get Lahaina to go along to be one of the world's first smart cities. They wanted to come in and put in, I don't know what they do to make it a smart city, but they put in 5G towers everywhere and they surveillance everything and they control everything. It becomes a smart city. And the city council denied it, shut it down, and wouldn't have nothing to do with it. They know what happens. They get burned to the ground. This is all diabolical wickedness. We're watching premeditated mass murder, just like the shooting in Las Vegas where the country western concert is going on. And they say this guy had an ungodly number of weapons in his room. And I don't care how crazy a guy is. You don't need to take 58 different weapons into your room. He would borrow them weapons up there believing he's going to make a lucrative firearms transaction and sell them all. And then they kill him and blame all the shooting on him. But there were people in that concert that were being shot at, said that bullets were coming from different directions. It's all, this is all crazy stuff. We watched we watched our election get denied. We saw Trump on the night of November 3rd, 2020 at 6 o'clock. I had a half a dozen friends at my house, and at 6 o'clock we saw Biden behind Trump a little bit, but by 7 o'clock, the little bit Biden was behind was doubled, and Trump went ahead and Biden went ahead, but Biden went ahead twice as much as he was. And by 8 o'clock, that lead had gone to 3 times as much. By 9 o'clock, Trump was 4 times further ahead than Biden. His lead was gaining. And at 9:30, when we all went home, we said, Trump's got it. And then what happened that election night? Nobody's ever seen happen before. They announced, stop counting the votes. Really? Stop counting the votes? Nobody ever stopped counting votes before because both sides want to know who's going to win. A lot of elections, it gets right down to the very last, and they don't know that this guy's ahead or that guy's ahead. And what do? They both want to keep counting the votes. We're trying to see who's going to win. They're all on pins and needles. Nobody wants to be told, stop counting the votes. Bull, you keep counting those votes. But they did. They stopped counting the votes for several hours, and in the middle of the night, and when they decided, okay, we're going to start counting the votes again. Oh, all of a sudden here come millions and millions of Biden votes coming in. There's no, it's so obvious to me, this massive voter fraud has happened. Our country's been overthrown. This is the time of the end. America is falling. And it's just like all these examples we have. The tree in Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar has, we're like Babylon, greatest kingdom in the world at that time as we are at this time. He has a dream about a tree falling. The tree falls and it represents his kingdom. A year later, after he's told the interpretation by Daniel, his kingdom was overthrown, his kingdom fell, and King Nebuchadnezzar lives out in the fields, sleeping in the fields at night, dew forming on his back, looking for grass to eat. He's cold and he's hungry, and so he's lost his mind. But for 7 times passes by, at the end of which his sanity returned, his counselors gather back around him, and what happens? When he believes there is a God that lifts kingdoms up and takes them down, then his kingdom is restored. It goes on to become greater than it was before. I go, that story is predicting the future of this United States. But we are the Babylon tree falling right now. And when the nuclear bombs go off, that will be like the big kaboom when a tree crashes and makes a big crash when it hits the ground. And 7 times will pass by, at the end of which we will rise up. Jesus will return. He will set up his kingdom of heaven on the earth. And this country will go on to become even more prosperous and way farther advanced. The technology is never going to stop and go away because we're going to see freaking armies coming from heaven to stop China's army at 200 million in Revelation 9. This is all crazy stuff, but when you understand this is God's plan, he's a slow. Joel chapter 2 says, he's slow to wrath, abounding in love and mercy and compassion. says, return to me with all your heart. The fact is, Joel 2 starts out saying it's the day of the Lord, a day of darkness and gloom, that a large and mighty army comes. Fire burns before them, flames behind them. Sun is dark. Well, that's obviously skies are full of smoke. And then it says, return to me with all your heart, with weeping and fasting and praying. Consecrate the assembly, gather the elders and the children, the nursing mothers. It's talking about a big revival taking place. Then it says, never again will this kind of God allow his people to go through this kind of punishment. Never again. And that the Lord will drive out the northern army. That's why I know it's the northern army in Joel, is the northern army in Ezekiel 38. It's also described in Jeremiah 6, where the army comes from the north, disaster from the north. They're going to attack at noon, but the daylight fades. They're going to make it a night attack. It's going to hit in the middle of the night, but it's also the 4 horsemen in Revelation 6, because it's a night attack. That's only on half of the earth vertically. And Jesus said in Matthew 24, when summer's near, it's at the door. The earth only has summer above the equator or below. The other half has winter. So you slice this earth horizontally with summer and winter description. You slice this earth vertically with night and day description. And the disaster coming in the middle of the night when summer's near is referring to 1/4 of the earth. Revelation 6 says the 4 horsemen have power to kill on 1/4 of the earth, a quarter of the earth. So the quarter of the earth just so happens, I got my globe out, I'm holding it in my hand, and I could see Canada, United States, North American continent. I could see the Atlantic Ocean, Greenland. I could see the Scandinavian countries of Norway, Sweden, Finland. I could see Ireland, Scotland, England, the great British Isles, and I could see Denmark and Netherlands and France and Germany, and I could see Portugal and Spain and Italy and Germany and Switzerland and Poland and Greece. I'm looking at all the NATO countries are occupying 1/4 of the earth. And so this is wars, rumors of wars. Can it be that the NATO countries are the house of Israel, or the many nations the Israelites became, the fulfillment of Abraham's description? It's NATO. And so the NATO countries are what the attack is coming on. And it's going to be an authorized United Nations global international law enforcement action. The United States specifically has been declared in violation of international law, as in George W. Bush taking instructions to attack Iraq to find weapons that they pre-planned would not be found, for the purpose of having Kofi Annan, UN Secretary General at the time, officially declared the United States is in violation of international law. This country's been made to appear to the whole world to be a big, powerful, out of control, going around causing death and destruction. And so the United Nations is painting a pretty picture that there's going to be a utopia. They're going to put an end to war. There's going to be an end to famines, and there'll be an end to, there'll be food for everyone, and world peace is coming. We just all have to join the United Nations one world government and get an RFID chip in your hand. You won't be able to buy or sell. They'll come up with some form of digital central bank digital currency where all money will be used in transactions electronically. There will be no physical cash anymore. Cash will be a thing of the past. And it'll be total enslavement, because they'll control everything you buy, everything you sell. They can freeze your account if there's any problem, if you cause any problems. And there'll be nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. They'll track every transaction you make. This is their plan. They're not going to stop. But God has a better plan. He's actually going to let the enemies self-destruct each other, because these global elite who want to have their one world government, new world order, they're basically the third beast in Daniel 7's prophecy. The first beast in Daniel 7 prophecies, time has passed, almost passed, not quite, but almost, because the first beast is the lion with wings of the eagle, and the lion is represented by the United Kingdom, and the eagle represents the United States, and that is the depiction George Bush, Tony Blair on the White House lawn declaring the war on terror. But Trump said the war on terror is out. It's time to bring the troops home. So it's all getting over. So it's all fulfillment of prophecy. I can talk some more. It's this.
We have to make another tape because we definitely went over the time. So let's do another one.
Okay.
Just end this one and we'll come back.
Okay.
Did you,
Can you hear me?
yeah, you got to X out. You got to stop the recording.
Well, I thought I did stop it. And I'm looking at, I stopped the video. Can you still hear me?